program today. So please note that any information that you provide will be managed in accordance with our privacy policy, and you can find the link to our privacy policy in the chat function of this session. With regard to questions, we will absolutely answer your questions. If you can pop them in the chat, we'll absolutely address those at the end. And then anything that we aren't able to answer today, we'll take note of those and come back to you directly after the session as well. Now, before I hand you over to Mary, I'd like to introduce you to Simon Wright. Simon is our General Manager of Endeavour Foundation's Home and Community Portfolio of Queensland South, and he's going to talk you through the Endeavour Foundation approach to our home services. Over to you, Simon.
Thank you, Andrea, and it is lovely to see so many people on the call today. Welcome. Look, as Andrea said, I just thought it was a good opportunity to talk a little bit about Endeavour's approach to supports and how we, as a long-standing organisation in the disability sector, continue to innovate and strive to be flexible and responsive to people's needs. So Endeavour has been around for over 70 years, providing high-quality supports to a whole range of people with disability across communities right throughout Queensland and in Victoria and New South Wales as well. And with that type of longevity within the sector, we've seen quite a lot of changes throughout funding mechanisms and approaches to support, and we're well entrenched within communities that we provide support to with really strong networks and relationships. And the opportunity, I think, to always question ourselves and work with the people that we support, our valuable referral partners, like the support coordinator network we have today, to ensure that we're always being flexible and responsive to people's needs and making sure that we're working with you to provide great outcomes for the people that we support. So I just wanted to give two quick examples this morning. Over the last 3 years, Endeavour has made a really large investment in high quality housing for people with a disability amongst our Endeavour Foundation home portfolio. And so our focus has been on supporting people to find their right home within that portfolio. And our processes and practices have been around helping people to find their right space within those homes. Recently, we had an inquiry from two people who live in their own home, and they were looking for a new provider to continue to provide the support within their home. So this was outside the type of process that we've had of recent times. But what we were able to do was work with those two individuals to understand what they were looking for, work with their stakeholders and their support coordinators to ensure that we were responsive and flexible to ensure that we could move in with them and make sure that we were providing the support that they were looking for. So although that's something that a lot of other providers do, it was something that was out of our scope for quite a while here at Endeavour. But quite quickly, we're able to work with them to deliver that really high quality support that they were looking for and build a new process and practice along the way to meet their needs. The other example is an interstate move. So we had an inquiry for one of the vacancies in our SIL homes from a gentleman who currently lives in Victoria, and he wanted to move up to Queensland like everybody else at the moment to move closer to his family. So although he wasn't able to come and visit to have a look at the home, his brother was. And so together with his brother, we were able to do a virtual tour of the home for him to view back in Victoria. And we were able to then go through the majority of our intake and assessment and compatibility process with him virtually to ensure that he was making an informed decision and we were ensuring that we were the right provider for him. So I guess that flexibility to do things differently to meet the needs of somebody, but also work collaboratively with all of our stakeholders and especially our valued referral partners along the way. So on that note, I'd like to hand over to Mary, and thank you very much. I look forward to the session.
Awesome. Thank you, Simon. Really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see the screen? Yep, you're all good.
It looks like you've got a question there. Would you mind popping it in the chat for me? Thank you.
Okay. You good to go? Yeah, okay, great. Hi, everyone. So, Mary, I'm from Support Coordination Academy. So, some very familiar names coming up. in the attendance, but basically we provide specialist support, purpose-built support coordinator training. We do coaching and we do consultancy as well. So we only focus on anything to do with support coordination. So that's just what we specialise in. So just to get a start today, we're very limited to time. So I'll take you through this session. And as Andrea was saying, any questions at all, just chuck them in the chat. And then we will come back and address the questions. And if there's anything remaining, Andrea's going to capture those and send them to me and I can respond to those directly. Otherwise, you can also contact me at info@scacademy.com.au or just go to our website as well. So happy for that. So we have a very specifically targeted session and we're going to be talking about understanding billable hours and preventing burnout for support coordinators. Okay, so we'll make a start. Okay, so billable hours. Andrew, just to keep in mind, I'll just keep talking. So if there's anything specific in the chat that you think is relevant that I could respond to right now, feel free just to intervene and just let me know, and I'm pretty flexible like that, okay? Because otherwise I'm just not keeping my eye on the chat, just so that you're aware. Okay, cool. So basically, what can you charge for? So all of you would know this if you're working as a support coordinator, that as well as direct service provision within the NDIS pricing arrangements and price limits, it's very clear about what you can charge for. So they talk about NDIS requested reports. So that's any report that the NDIS directly requests you to do. So any progress reports like your 8-week report, or you might be working with a very complex client and they might want, progress reports every 3 months or 6 months, or the most common one that you'll find is your end of plan review report. So that's the report that you pull together at the end of a plan to identify the goals, what's going forward, recommending supports. So anything to do with that, you're able to bill for. Short notice cancellation, so that's very clear within the rules, within the guidelines about when you can claim for short notice cancellations. For a support coordinator, that more relates to if you've organised a home visit and you've turned up to the home visit and the person isn't available or they haven't turned up and you've already used your time to get there. Quite often with support coordinators, because we work so flexibly and we work quite a lot behind the scenes, we can often reuse that time for something else. So it's very rarely that we would charge someone for a short notice cancellation. Non-face-to-face, we're going to go into that a lot more, Provided travel is the travel to and from those home visits. And again, the rules are very clear about the time and the amount of time that you can claim for that, how you can claim for that. And then provided travel non-labour costs are those things that aren't specific. So they're things like parking or tolls or anything like that. So again, the rules within the price guide or the pricing arrangements and price limits, sorry, I refer to it as a price guide, are very clear around that. Well, there's some transparency, but it's quite clear around what they are. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is just highlighting that these are what the rules say that you can claim for as a support coordinator in psychosocial recovery coaching. But the reality is that what these don't do is they're very high level categories. What they don't do is help you to understand the activities that we do on a daily, hourly basis that fall within these high level categories. So what does that actually look like? And these are the questions that I get from support coordinators all the time. But I understand what I can claim for, but specifically, what does that actually mean? So we're going to drill down into that a bit more. So the thing that I really want to highlight is that as a support coordinator, billing for your time, it's a new skill that's required, especially if you have worked in the human services sector before, whether it's disability or any other sector. We've never really had to bill for our time or account for our time because our wages or our roles have often been pre-funded, like in that block funding. So it's a foreign thing, it's a foreign skill, it's a new skill that we're having to learn. And it's a real challenge. I find a lot of support coordinators really find this quite challenging. Okay. So this is a handout that we developed as part of our support coordination fundamentals workshop So our fundamentals workshop is really focused for people who are new to support coordination, brand new to the role, or those wanting to understand what the role is, find out a bit more about the role. It provides a lot of scope and boundaries around the role. And this is one of the handouts that we have where we talk about billable time. And it's a handout that you will actually receive today. So I've provided it to Andrea, and Andrea will have all your email addresses and she'll send this out to you. And it really delves into what is within and outside the scope of billable time. So when I talk about scope, I'm talking about the boundaries of your role. So is that within the scope of your role or is that outside the scope of your role? So it really, the handout will delve into this a lot more. So you can already see it talks about what does face-to-face mean, what does provider travel mean. It delves into the high level, but then we're going to go into more depth in relation to non-face-to-face. Okay. So when we talk about non-face-to-face, and I want you to either put your microphone on or actually I'm going to get the chat up so I can see it. Here we go. Here we go. What I'd like you to come back to me with is when we talk about non-face-to-face, people often say to me, well, what does that actually mean? So non-face-to-face is anything else, basically, that's not included in either face-to-face, travel, report writing, all that kind of stuff. But it goes a bit deeper than that. So what are some of the activities that you do? You can just put them in the chat that you think are included within non-face-to-face. What do you think they are? And then I'll go into all this. Okay, brilliant. So research and supports. Yeah, definitely. Speaking with stakeholders. Most of my work is phone calls. Here we go. Fantastic. And working outside and working out services. Phone calls, any referrals? Definitely. Okay. So any referrals, definitely I would be talking about referrals in relation to referring to other services and things like that. Contacting service providers and getting service agreements, going through essays, fantastic report writing, reviewing budgets. Well done. Most of the common things that we have. Okay, so I'm going to provide you with a wee bit more clarity. So I'm going to keep an eye on the chat. So if you have anything more like this, just put them in the chat. So research is a really, really good one. So what I want to clarify is what's within scope, what's within outer scope. So when we talk about research within our role is we do that all the time. We're constantly getting on the internet. We're looking for providers. We're talking to our networks. We're exploring our own communities, and that's all research. So research is billable time when it specifically relates to finding or sourcing supports or researching supports in relation to participants that we're working with. So you might have a participant who needs a specific support, and there might be, say, someone who's providing speech therapy within the local area is able to do speech therapy within the community for a specific disability. So that research is specific to a participant that we're supporting. Yeah? Does that make it clear for everyone? Great. So however, if you're doing research in general to specifically build your knowledge and skills, so your toolbox of understanding what's available within your community, and it's not specific to a participant, to a specific participant or participants that you're working with, then that is non-billable time. That is outside the scope, because then that is more relates to building your professional knowledge. Okay. So what I'm doing is giving you some clarity around the questions that I get every single day. Okay. So emails, phone calls, text messages, anything like that you're responding to. So if you're responding to service providers that you're arranging, if you're responding to service agreements, you're sending out service agreements, checking service agreements, any phone calls that you're making in relation to organising supports for participants, even text messages. If you are working with a participant and they prefer text message communication as opposed to phone calls or emails, they are all billable time. Again, if it directly relates to service provision for a specific participant that you're working with, it is billable time. So would be really interesting to have a think about how do you calculate that time? Because when you're doing research, it often takes you like 10, 15 minutes, or could be half an hour. Emails, phone calls, sometimes they can take very limited time. So how do you calculate that time? Can someone give me an example? Who does 6? So some people do 6-minute increments. Some people do 15-minute increments. How do you do it? Do you have set times for activities? I do 5-minute increments. Well done, Lauren. Usually do a cumulative total 15 minutes, 6-minute increments. Okay, brilliant. Well done, guys. Recording the screenshot of phone calls. Okay, we'll be in 15-minute blocks. If less than 10 minutes, don't charge. Okay. It's a really, again, this is why I say it's a skill that people need to have. New to the role, so I'm learning. Thank you, Jay, that really helps. Some people find that they, for me personally, I keep a pad and pen ready. So when I'm doing anything in relation to a participant, I have a page, I have my participant's name, and then I basic phone call, trying to record the time. Other people have apps that they use. Other people record them on paper. But basically, it's about being really organised and keeping track of your time, writing it down somewhere. So 15-minute increments outlined in the service time. Online timers help too. Well done, Lauren. I use the history on my phone to check the time spent. Yeah. I'm a note taker, use my calendar. Yeah, well done. So thinking about a strategy that you can use that helps you to be really, really efficient in how you keep that time. But people generally do 6-minute increments. So 6-minute increments, how that works is that they go generally for every activity they do a minimum of 6 minutes. And then they multiply that depending on how long that they actually use. Other times, people use a 15-minute increment, so 1-5. And that's quite a common one as well. So how they do that is they basically go within our role. Quite often what they do is they say, okay, so I might take a phone call from a participant, and then I might do my case notes, and then I might follow up with an email in relation to that participant, and then I kind of put that file down, and then I pick up another thing and I'm working with someone else. Might get another phone call. So in general, things can take you between 10, 20 minutes or 15 minutes. So basically with a 15-minute increment, people charge per 15 minutes, minimum. So basically what that's acknowledging is that you might only do something for like 10 minutes and you'd roll it up to 15. And then other times it might take you 20 minutes and you'd roll it down to 15. So it's about an average time it takes you to do an activity or complete something in relation to a participant. So that's kind of the framework or the methodology behind those two ways that people calculate their time. So have a think about it. Quite often organisations have a set process or policy around how they claim that time. And I really like the way that Danielle was saying that it's actually written into their service agreement about how they calculate their time. Because being very, very clear about how you calculate your time, because some participants so we have support coordination software, and within our software, you can actually generate like a statement that says all of the activities that you've done and how much time, so that a participant can actually see, has that transparency. So thinking about how you can be really, really clear when you're doing your billable time, about how you can capture that, how you can be transparent. But also as part of your service agreement, being really clear about what you're actually billing for, what are those activities? Because we know as support coordinators, I would say 70 to 80% of our time is behind the scenes, that non-face-to-face stuff, travel, they're not that direct service delivery that a participant will always see. So something to kind of have a think about, and how can you be transparent about that? Okay, right. So I really just wanted to raise that in relation to how you actually do calculate your billable time, because it's a question that I always get. Okay, so emails, phone calls, text messages are often really, really quick things. So thinking about how you're going to keep track of those stuff. So another one that you guys raised was stakeholders. So in relation to stakeholders, so stakeholders for me are anybody that is directly related to supporting that participant. So it's their stakeholder network. So it could be a person's family that you're dealing with or having conversations with or keeping informed. It could be any allied health team, so therapists, it could be support workers, it could be the person themselves, it could be a friend or a nominee that you're working with. So when I'm talking about stakeholders, any service or support that is directly related to that participant. It could be mainstream services. So you could be working with someone who is directly related to mental health services that you're having a lot of stakeholder meetings with, or phone calls or follow up with. So stakeholder group could be any community organisations, any mainstream services that are directly related to that participant, or any paid or funded services. And also their informal networks and support. So it's any of those supports that are directly related to that participant that you are coordinating with, you're communicating with, to be able to coordinate and link all those supports to make sure that everybody is on the same page and is working towards the same goals. So anything to do with that is billable time. So that could be meetings, could be emails, could be phone calls, all that kind of thing. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. What that also includes is if you are facilitating a meeting or in your broader stakeholder meeting or a key meeting together, writing up the notes, all of that is billable time. Okay. If you're developing action plans or risk assessment, that is all billable time. That is all part of your professional evidence of the service that you've provided. Okay. As well as your case notes are billable time. Okay.
Mary, there's a question in the chat from Wendy. Did you want to read that one out, or would you like me to?
Okay, so I'm just concerned about using their budget too quickly. What is everyone doing about their note-taking time? Our organisation allows 10 minutes per session for billable note writing, but I find it takes me a lot longer to write my notes for a longer session, so I don't bill for the full report writing time. Not report writing, I meant note writing. Okay. So case notes are supposed to be very clear and succinct. If your case notes are taking you hours at a time, they're too long. So I would be first of all, I would be responding to saying, support coordinators that I work with, I don't put a time limit on how long it takes them to write your case notes. So thinking about how you can efficiently write your case notes, the more often you do them, the less time that they will take you, because you're fresh in your mind and you're constantly doing them. Case notes are billable time. So it's always good to be thinking about how long it's taking you to write your case notes. It doesn't need to be a full report every time. You're really just writing notes, you're attaching things to your case notes. So again, coming back to what are the systems and processes that you're using. If your case notes are taking a long time, talking to your organisation about what are the systems that you're using. Are you using a software that easily catches your case notes, your billable time, and attaches all their documents, so it's a lot more efficient and it's not taking you as long? Or are you using quite manual processes that are taking a long time? That I would understand why you're concerned about how long it's taking you to do your case notes. Okay. So having a think about some of those things, having a look at different softwares, like our software, the support coordination software, it's very much more streamlined. So again, coming back to billable time, it is a question. It's a very valid question that you're making, Wendy, in relation to worried about using their budget too quickly. It's not about going, well, if I do too many case notes, I'm going to use their budget too quickly. It's about stepping back and going, if you're having to do a lot of intensive work with a participant and you're having to write a lot of case notes, so again, thinking about how you can be more efficient in how you do that. What are the systems and processes you're working? But if you're working with a participant and it's really complex and you're having to write a lot of case notes, action plans, risk assessments, all that kind of thing, and you're chewing through the hours, then you need to be stepping back and doing some planning around, do we need to be going back to the NDIS and providing evidence about the level of complexity and requesting additional support coordination hours? Okay, so thinking back, the NDIS assess the level of complexity and how many hours are allocated for that participant based on an 1.5 hour assessment. Yeah, we work with participants all the time. So we might get a participant who might have $5,000 worth of funding, maybe 52 hours of funding a year, but we're finding we're chewing through that really quickly because the person's gone into crisis or there's a lot of things going on in their lives. It's about coming back and assessing whereabouts, where are we at? Are we keeping track of those hours? Again, what systems are you using? Are we able to easily be able to track those hours and forecast how many hours we've got left? And if we're going through them really quickly, you would have evidence about the difference in the need. You need to be going back to the NDIS and requesting additional support coordination hours. So again, Wendy, I'm happy to talk to you about that outside the session. If it would help, you can email us. I have a question, but I'm not sure if it would be more relevant to later on. What if coordinating with the client stakeholders and a client takes way more than time is funded? Funded for 1.5 hours, but the participant calls enough for 3 hours. Okay. So Rebecca, I think what you're talking about is that you've got a client that is quite demanding and calls you quite often and uses up a lot of your time. Again, it's coming back to your, if I'm correct, it's coming back to how do you manage those situations? How do you put strategies in place to be able to reduce the amount of time that you're on the phone and that you're working with this participant? So understanding what the underlying needs is, but also putting strategies in place around that to reduce the amount of time. I'm not quite sure what you meant by funded for 1.5 hours. So I think, Rebecca, we might come back to that one at the end of the session so we can talk about that one a bit more. Okay, well done, Jade. So you're actually doing your case notes as you're doing them. Wendy, can we come back to that? Because I'd like to clarify that a bit more. That would be great. Okay. I've already talked about evidencing support providers. So that's your case notes, your action plans, your risk assessments. This is all evidence that you use as part to evidence your NDIS reporting. It's also professionally, you have to keep those things because if you get audited, if you're a registered provider, but also if there's any concerns raised, incident reports, anything like that is all billable time. And it's about evidence in your professional practice. So if the NDIS come back to you and they go, you know, we've had some concerns raised about your service, can you please evidence the support that you provided? These are all things that you need to keep as part of your professional responsibility. If you are going back to the NDIS and you are requesting additional hours and you're working with someone with very high and complex needs, then you can provide them with a copy of your risk assessment. If you're wanting to ask for specialist support coordination, risk assessments are part of your, so that are around your professional responsibility, evidencing the work that you're doing. Okay. If you are completing any NDIS forms, if you're gathering evidence from the service providers to go for a change of situation, if you're supporting a participant to complete a change of situation, the time that you have discussing with the NDIS around a change of situation in relation to the participant, that's all billable time. Okay. I know these are quite detailed and it sounds like a lot of things, but the reality is that as support coordinators, we need to be very, very clear about what we're billing for and being very clear to the NDIS about what we're billing for and evidencing those supports. Because unless we do that, this is really reinforcing to the NDIS about all of the activities that we do and being really clear about that. And if they're coming back and saying, oh, well, we think that's enough hours, we'll say, here's my notes, here's my evidence to show you what I billed for. Because until we actually understand the scope of what we can bill for and we bill correctly, that will reinforce to the NDIS what level of funding that they need to be providing to us. Because if we keep underbilling, the NDIS will keep allocating the hours based on their assessment. But if we are very clear about our scope and we go, no, we actually require this level of hours because this is the level of support that we're providing for this level of intensity, it's reinforcing and that's forcing the NDIS to actually come back and reassess how they're identifying the level of support that's required for that person. Okay, hopefully that's making sense to everyone. Another one is one of the things that we don't often see, or the questions that I get from the NDIS or from the NDIS as well, but also from participants and support coordinators, is that part of that safeguarding role. And some of you, so as a support coordinator, we are the intermediary between the NDIS and a participant. So we basically inform the NDIS and we keep them informed through changes of situation, through our reporting, all that kind of thing about a participant situation. So that's part of our safeguarding role. Other parts of our safeguarding role are completing incident reporting, supporting a participant to lodge a complaint, checking service agreements to ensure, and following up on service agreements to ensure that a participant is receiving the support that they've agreed to receive. So if someone is providing supports outside that service agreement, that's part of our safeguarding role, to actually go, hold on a minute, talking to that service provider saying, well, part of your service agreement is saying this, but you're providing this. We need to come back and renegotiate that, or we need to be saying, you know, making sure that a participant's getting the services that they've agreed to. So thinking about some of those activities you do to ensure that a participant has their choice and control and their rights are being met. Okay, linking them in with advocates. Okay, so the NDIS are very, very clear around that advocacy role. Of course, we do advocacy on a daily basis. We inform participants about their rights. We give them information. We upskill service providers to understand our role as well as the needs of our participants. So that's kind of an advocacy role. But when the NDIS talk about advocacy, they're talking about formal advocates. So we cannot, that's outside the scope of our role. If a person needs someone to walk alongside them to access their rights, so if you think they've been taken advantage of, or they're going through a tribunal, or they might be providing, you know, questioning access to the scheme, you would link them with a formal advocate to do that. Okay, got some really good comments here. Okay, so people have got some really good recommendations in here about how they take their software, how they do their notes. Yep, absolutely, Danielle. If you're using a software program to catch case notes, you can usually drag and drop. Yep, our one does that as well. It's really good, everything in one place. Okay. Stuck on that time frame, yeah. It's the work that goes into the NDIS here. Okay. There are changes coming up in relation to the time it takes us to upload, keep the NDIS in contact, ringing that 1-800 number. Hopefully some of you have been to the new PACE service provider information sessions, which were really good. There's some really good changes coming for support coordinators around that PACE system, which is going to really help to streamline some of our interactions with the NDIS. Okay, so I'm going to keep going because I'm just mindful of the time. Okay, what about NDIS review meetings, reassessment meetings they're called now? What about attending an NDIS meeting? Do you think that that's necessary? Do we always need to go along to a reassessment meeting? What do you think? If you, okay, be really good, absolutely, yeah, okay. So from my experience, I always talk to my participants around, I always go out and do that pre-review. So I'm doing that review, I'm gathering information, you know, doing the reporting for the NDIS, sending that all in, gathering all that evidence, making recommendations about the supports that are required in the next plan. But in relation to attending a meeting, what I would always say to people is always talking to your participants and thinking about how you're going to add value to that meeting. If you've got a participant who's got a really good support network and they're very clear about their support needs, you've put the report in, you've talked to them about it, that you feel that their network can advocate for them or they can advocate for themselves, absolutely. You don't need to be part of that meeting. So it's about choice and control, absolutely. If the participant wants you to be there and you can clearly see how you're going to add value, absolutely be part of that meeting. I would say for the participants that I've been working with, I'd probably say 80% of the participants that I've been working with, I support them in those meetings. Again, coming back to that capacity building role, if you've linked in those informal networks or those other networks that can support them through that process, then we don't need to be there because we're building that capacity. But if we're building their capacity to show them the questions that they need to ask and helping them to understand what's going on and translate some of that information and help to inform the NDAs around their support needs, absolutely. It's vital to be in those meetings. But being really clear to a participant that that's billable time. Okay. And the other thing to remember too is that when you're within those meetings, it's not our role to be an advocate. It's our role to talk to help a participant be able to articulate and get across, whether it's family or whether it's a participant themselves, around what their support needs are. And responding to your report as well, because quite often what I find, if it's a really good planner, they'll ask you questions about your report. Is that making sense to everyone? Any questions around that? Okay. Okay, the other thing that is that non-face-to-face, some of the reassessment meetings of that face-to-face, some of the activities are non-face-to-face. So reviewing NDIS plan utilisation. So that's a major part of our role as well, and often it's one of the things that we do behind the scenes. So requesting statements from plan managers, accessing PROTA if you're a registered provider, regularly reviewing how participants' budget's going, updating the software or updating your own budget planning Excel sheets if you're using them, setting up meetings with the participant to do that future planning around budget expenditure and utilisation. So having some really good forward planning, some meetings, whether it's every 3 months or whether it's depending on how quickly they're using their budgets, to review the budgets, reviewing the goals, reviewing the supports and needs, doing those check-in meetings, so organising all that stuff, reviewing the gaps and supports, and doing that planning with a participant around that utilisation of their budgets. Okay. Can anyone else think of anything else that I haven't covered that you would think would sit within that billable time? Anyone? Okay, we're going quite quickly, so I know I tend to talk quite quickly as well, so if there's anything specific. Okay. Great, Lauren. I've experienced this too. Set up a dedicated time with them on a fortnightly basis, talk and get really stuck. Well done, Lauren. And that's a great example of a strategy. When you're working with someone who is quite demanding of your time and constantly rings, another strategy that I used was a person who would constantly ring me. So I would have an answering machine and they would leave messages for me overnight and I would get the messages in the morning and I would respond to them via email. And so we used to have a set amount of time once a week where we could sit down and go through it, or otherwise we would do it via email. And also set up a really good safety plan so that if they felt that they needed to talk to someone at that point in time, that they had other people that they could call and numbers that they could connect with. Okay, so everybody's different. Again, it's coming back to, like Lauren's done, understanding their need and why they feel that they need to ring you all the time, and then developing strategies around that to meet that need. Okay. Any questions about within scope? Can you please advise the amount for a caseload for a SC on level 2? I get that question all the time. There is no standardised caseload. Everybody is different. What I would say about caseloads is if you're working for an organisation, you need to be very, very clear about your skills and abilities, whether you're new, whether you're experienced, the skills that you bring with you, your knowledge, all that kind of thing. If you're new, you should be building up to a caseload. Quite often people get really skilled within the job and they carry higher caseloads with higher complexity. Every organisation is different. If you're an independent and you're running your own business, or a contractor, they often determine the number of people and the number of hours that they want to work. So it's quite different. Organisations will often have KPIs and time, billable time. Contractors don't have that because they just work the hours that they work. Okay. Coming back to some really good questions. I'm going to come back to these too. If anyone, it would be really good for people who are on the chat to actually identify whether you're a level 2, if you work for an organisation, so you're a full-time employee, what your caseloads are, or if you're a contractor, how many hours you work and what your caseload is. That'll help people get a bit of an idea of what an average might be. Okay. If you're happy to share that information, yeah, that would be really good because that will help someone. Okay, as a casual 33. Okay, so when you say you're a casual, how many hours do you work a week? It's really helped say level 2, how many hours and what your caseload is. Full-time hours, there you go. Okay, thank you, Ruby. 85% billable, great. Yeah, well done, Tricia, that's a really good strategy. Pay for billable time only, yeah. Send it to everyone, yeah. Psychosocial recovery coach, 10 clients, 15 hours a week. There we go. So starting to give you a bit of an idea. Again, it should come back to your skill level, your confidence, your understanding of the NDIS, your knowledge, your experience, and the area that you're specializing in, because some clients you'll be working with will be very highly complex, where other clients will be less complex and take up less of your time. Okay. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Thank you, guys. That's really, really helpful. Right. Going to very, very quickly talk about what's out of scope of billable time. So transport is a quick one that I get all the time. Transport, if you're picking someone up and you're transporting them, that is not billable time. It's not something that you can claim for, and it's not part of the support coordinator role. I do acknowledge with psychosocial recovery coaching, that's quite different, but with a support coordinator, level 1, 2, and 3, transport is not something that you can claim for. Often as support coordinators, we organise, that's what support workers do. Okay. So some of your operational requirements. So if you're getting your service agreements assigned or your consent form signed, you cannot charge for that. That's part of your operational requirement. It's not billable time. You should not be billing a participant until after you have got a service agreement and consent form signed. Okay? Because that's when they have agreed to engage with service. Other organisational responsibilities are outside the scope of a billable time, so you cannot claim for them. Team meetings, team supervision, team training, they are all part of your professional responsibilities or organisational. It's about building your professional skills and knowledge. So support coordination does not have establishment fees. You cannot bill time for rostering support workers because it's out of our scope of our support coordinator role. If it's something your organisation chooses to do, that might be part of your organisation, but it's outside the scope of the support coordinator role, scheduling support workers. So I'll give you an example. If you're working with a participant who chooses to employ their own directly support workers, they might be self-managing them, or they might source their own support workers and they do their own schedule, that's their choice. It's not part of our role to go, okay, from this day to this day, you've got this support worker and that support worker. Rostering is not part of our role. If someone requires that level of service, then you would be linking them in with a service provider that can do that for them. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a question I get all the time. Okay, managing your support coordination budget. not doing utilisation of other budgets, but your own support coordination budget. It's an administrative responsibility. It is outside the scope of billable time. So keeping track of your support coordination hours, all that kind of stuff, you know, how many hours you've got left, if you're doing reporting to your own organisation, that's outside the scope of your role, outside the scope of billable time, I should say. Okay. Building your professional connections and networks. So if you're attending a community of practice for support coordinators, that's not billable time. If you are going to a conference, that's not billable time. If you're going to a networking session and you're not researching specifically in relation to a participant, it's more about building your knowledge of services available, then that is not billable time. Hopefully that makes, these are questions that I get all the time.
Mary,
Okay.
there's a new question in the chat there. I've just transferred over. It's what about organising support workers through Mabel and when you have to write the ads, help interview, etc.?
Yeah, that is definitely billable time. Yeah. So you're supporting a participant to build their capacity. So I do very similar things through Kind. So the participant that I work with, he likes to get his participants through Kind. And so I talk to him about what are the things that he needs, what is the information that he wants to share. We help to build the ad together, and then we put it up on Kind. So again, that's capacity building. And he actually approves any shifts through Kind. So he has the app on his phone and he approves the shifts as they come through. Does that help? If you're helping with interviewing and things like that with a participant and you're building capacity, that's definitely billable time. What I'm more referring to in relation to rostering is that if the participant is able to source their support workers through Mabel or Kind, or there's a number of them, then they obviously have capacity to understand when they need those support workers and they can schedule when they need them. You might help them put that schedule together, but then they would need to continue that rostering on a regular basis. Does that make sense? Does that help, Andrea? Yeah, okay, good. Hopefully I'm being clear. If I'm not, I'm happy for you to flick me an email and so I can provide you with more clarity. And again, I'm only giving you the information based on the information that I'm receiving. So if you have a very complex situation, I'm happy to talk with them about that later on. Okay. Got to keep going because we're going to run out of time. Okay, right. Here we go. How do you manage your time and what can you do to prevent burnout? So we've already talked about some strategies to manage your time. So having really good software, thinking about the systems and the processes that you're working with. If you're working with manual spreadsheets across a number of spreadsheets and you save your case notes over here and you've got another system to track your hours and another system here and another system here, that's all taking up your administrative time. Thinking about, there's a lot of software, we've got software, but there's other softwares that you can look at as well to streamline the administrative processes that are taking up your time, especially with your case notes and stuff like that. So looking at your systems and processes, if it's clunky and it's taking up your time, go and do some exploration about how you can be more efficient in doing that. Okay, also thinking about how do you organize yourself on a daily basis. So you're using your calendar to schedule check-ins. You know, if you've got a software, have you got to-do lists and reminders to say, so planning ahead. Regular check-ins for when you're going to be checking in with the participants, especially those participants who you don't see very often, you still need to be checking in with them. That's part of your responsibility. My diary is my Bible. Absolutely, Renee. Same here. I'm a list person. So I make constant lists and I constantly tick them off. Having action plans are really, really good because I can go back to my action plan and go, okay, I've covered this, and this, still need to follow up on this. So putting in times within your calendar to regularly pick up and review a participant's file. So besides all the check-ins and the regular things that you do, having some extra times to stop, check and review and go, okay, so I followed up on these are the things that I need to do, add them to your list, add them to your diary, add them to your Outlook to say, and give yourself reminders about when you need to do things. So thinking how you can keep yourself organised. We need to be very organised in our job. Okay, any other strategies that you've got about how you keep yourself organised? If you could share them in the chat, that would be amazing, because then you can really share them with everybody. And again, make sure you're selecting sharing with everybody. Okay. Really good, guys. Okay. We've talked about how you do your billable time, calculating time, 6 minutes, 15 minutes. And again, thinking about the systems that you're using. How are you keeping track of that billable time? Are you using a software that automatically does it all, calculates it for you? Are you doing that manually within a spreadsheet? So thinking about that. Action lists, diaries. Yeah, well done, Sarah. Regular check-ins, and there is a lot of work to do from it. I did to-do lists. Yeah. Great. Well done. Some really good strategies there. Okay. Thinking about how you could prevent burnout. Okay. There's a number of ways that you can prevent burnout. So making sure that you're structured within your day and you have day for time out. So if you're working from home, making sure you have set hours, regular times, a separate space, a really good environment that you can do your work from. And then when you're outside your work, you're outside your work. So you're not picking up your phone after hours. You're not checking your emails unless you need to catch up on work. You have very strict boundaries about what's work and what's home. And also taking time to exercise, get out, breathe, go outside, get some fresh air, making sure you're taking regular breaks. Okay. Having really good professional boundaries, so really understanding the scope and the boundaries of your role, because what that does is it helps you to set professional boundaries, but it also helps you to have realistic expectations of your role for yourself, but also for others. So if you've got a service provider who's constantly going, oh no, well, you need to follow up on this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this, or a participant is putting a lot of pressure on you to do that, you're able to say, actually, I'm just going to give you a bit more information about the scope of my role. This is actually what I do as part of my role. And what you're actually asking me to do is outside the scope. So how can we manage this a bit better, and negotiating what that's going to actually look like, or pushing back to a provider and going, actually, that's part of your responsibility, not mine. In a nice way, of course, but that really helps you to set those professional boundaries, because it can become overwhelming pretty quickly. Understanding your own strengths, your skills, and your abilities, and matching those to the participants that you're working with, so that you're able to say to your organisation, if you're getting a referral, or your organisation, or whoever you're working with, or if you're running your own business and you're looking at a referral, or someone saying to you, there's this participant that's coming along and this is the context of their situation, being really clear about what your skills, abilities are, so that you're able to say, yep, no, I've got capacity, I can take that participant on, or I don't think I have really good skills to work with that participant, and I think you need to look at someone else. So being really clear about that, because not only is it taking care of yourself, you're putting those professional boundaries in place, you're also not taking on a participant that you don't have the skills to work with or experience. So you're not letting that participant down, because that can be quite dangerous in some situations for a participant. You're not actually working with someone and then you're instantly feeling like you're drowning. So being really clear about that. And being really clear about and doing that, having regular supervision with whether it's outside external supervision or internal supervision, and identifying where your skill gaps are and proactively looking for professional development opportunities to enhance those skills. Yeah. Absolutely, self-care is incredibly important within our role, because most of us work from home and it can be quite isolating. So making sure you are having regular supervision, and if you don't have it internally, looking for it externally. Because if you're looking for it externally, you can actually claim that from your tax as well. Okay. Understanding your role in managing a crisis. and how to assess and manage risk. Yeah. So understanding the parts of your safeguarding role. So it's our role to respond to risk by linking in appropriate supports. Our role is to create and build resilience and capacity in participants. So we're not a crisis service. So what does that mean? How do we support our participants through that? And as part of the support coordinator role, it's not our role to hold on to that risk and manage that ongoing risk. So how do we build our professional skills to manage that? Getting training in that and understanding what that means. So, for example, as part of our training, we have professional skills development. So one is around understanding how to have influence and navigate your way through complexity. The other one is around evidencing the need for specialists. So understanding how to manage that, what risk assessments are and how you do all that. And again, if you're a sole trader, getting regular supervision and coaching. Okay, sorry, I probably talked too long. We need to get to these questions. I'll come back to you, Andrea.
All right. Thank you so much for joining the call today, everyone. I hope that it's been incredibly valuable. I've learned so much myself. Before we leave you for today, do you have any questions? Pop them in the chat now and we'll answer them as we can. I saw a really great comment a moment ago from Tricia Clark in the chat. It got me thinking, in my role even. She says, does anyone else ever feel guilty for taking a break?
Of course we do.
Yes, but it's so important, isn't it?
It's very
All that
important.
self-care.
Yeah, and Tricia, that just shows how passionate you are about what you do, and that's a good thing. But self-care is very, very, very important. That's how we maintain our professionalism, but also our own health and well-being within the role.
Wendy's asked if the recording will be available after the session. Absolutely, it definitely will be. We'll send that one out.
And Andrea, you're also going to send out that handout. What about the coaching certificate?
Yes, so the lucky door prize for this session will be drawn after we've closed out for today. So a few things. After we've closed today's session, you will be prompted to complete a survey. So can I please ask everyone to complete the survey today? Because that will help us in forming up the next session that we run for this group of support coordinators. The other component is, yes, absolutely, the Lucky Door Prize. So Support Coordination Academy have very generously provided a certificate for support coordinator coaching. So we'll draw that one and send it out in an email with the winner, and we'll directly contact that winner as well. I see that there's been a flood of questions coming through. So let's start again with Jade before we close out. I had 3 clients hit crisis in 1 week. None of them had any support outside of my work. I ran the NDIA and they referred me to basically nothing and no one. I feel some days that there isn't other organisations out there helping.
Yeah, yeah, Jade, and it's really just about working with those clients and trying to link in supports and thinking. I'm happy to talk to you more about that, Jade, outside the session if you want to email me. I'm just going to put it in here.
There's another question from Rose. Yeah. Is there any way we can see the PACE info sessions? Okay. Was that with you or with the NDIA?
It was with the NDIA. So if you get onto the NDIA website and you look at their news and events page, you can sign up to their newsletters, but you can also sign up to their events. They write that. So the PACE is the new IT system that's been trialled in Tasmania, and it will be rolled out, trialled whole of Tasmania. Participants, service providers, support coordinators, association, recovery coaches, everybody. And they just gave an update about where they're at and what some of the changes are. If you go onto the NDIS website and search for PACE, P-A-C-E, there's a lot of information in there that you can read about it. But just, you can sign up to their events. They ran them. The service provider engagement teams ran them. and they'll be running them quite regularly as they get closer to rolling the system out nationwide. But there's going to be some very clear impacts for support coordinators and psychosocial recovery coaches. So, I mean, that could be another session as well, Andrea. But anyway,
yes, I think
what else was
we
there?
have.
There you go. Danielle's put a link in there. Fantastic.
Yeah. So I think we've hit time, everyone. So thank you, Mary, and thank you, Simon, for joining us today. And thanks to our wonderful support coordinators on the call. We know your time is valuable, so I hope that you found this session equally as valuable. Any questions, please send them through to either Mary at the Support Coordination Academy for specific support coordinator questions, or if you have any Endeavour Foundation related questions, email hello@endeavour.com.au. Until next time, don't forget to complete that survey and keep your eyes peeled, because you might be the lucky winner of our Lucky Door prize. Thanks, everybody.
Hello everybody, welcome to our Learning and Lifestyle Hub. This is where we make learning fun.
Hi, I'm Grace. I live independently with support when I need it. I live my life my way.
Hi, my name's Jeremy. My daughter's 3 years old. My daughter's proud that I come to work.
Hi, I'm Maddie and I work for the Endeavour Foundation. I come to work with a big smile on my face every day.
Love to work here because that's my new family.